You may have seen the famous symbol of Freemasonry many times, the square and the compasses. But in many lodges, right at the center of that symbol, there is a single letter, the letter G. And here is something curious. Most people believe they already know what it means. They assume it simply stands for God. But within the traditions of Freemasonry, and within the deeper streams of esoteric philosophy, that single letter hides layers of meaning that connect ancient civilizations, sacred geometry, mystical philosophy, and the idea that the universe itself may have been built according to a precise and intelligible design. In fact, some Masonic scholars have argued that understanding the true symbolism of this letter changes the way we see not only Freemasonry, but reality itself. The letter G began appearing prominently in Masonic symbolism during the development of speculative Freemasonry in the 18th century, especially within English-speaking lodges and rites connected to what later became the York tradition. Inside the square and compasses, the letter served as a reminder of two fundamental principles that every Mason was expected to contemplate throughout his life. The first meaning is the most well-known, which is God. In Masonic language, this is often expressed as the great architect of the universe. This title is important because it avoids tying the symbol to any single religion. Instead of referring to a specific doctrine, it refers to the idea that the universe itself is the result of a supreme intelligence, an architect whose design can be observed in the structure of nature. But the second meaning is just as important, and in some ways even more revealing. The letter G also represents geometry. To modern ears, geometry might sound like a simple branch of mathematics. But in ancient traditions, geometry was considered a sacred science. It was believed to be the language through which the divine mind structured the cosmos. Albert Pike, one of the most influential Masonic philosophers of the 19th century, wrote that geometry was regarded by initiates as the key through which humanity could glimpse the architecture of creation itself. For Pike, the study of proportion, harmony, and mathematical order was not merely intellectual, it was spiritual. And when we look deeper into history, we discover that this idea did not begin with Freemasonry. More than 2,000 years earlier, the philosopher Pythagoras and his followers believed that numbers and geometric forms were the hidden framework of reality. According to the Pythagoreans, everything in existence, from musical harmony to the movement of the stars, followed mathematical relationships. In their view, the universe was not chaos. It was a perfectly ordered system built according to number and proportion. Later traditions preserved this insight. In ancient Egypt, temple builders aligned their structures according to astronomical cycles and sacred proportions. In the Hermetic teachings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, the cosmos itself was described as an expression of divine intelligence unfolding through order and measure. So when the letter G appears in Masonic symbolism representing geometry, it is pointing to a much older idea. The idea that the universe operates according to intelligible laws, and that by studying those laws, human beings can better understand both nature and themselves. But here is where the symbolism becomes even more interesting. For some initiates and esoteric thinkers, the letter G carries a third layer of interpretation. Beyond God and beyond geometry, some see it as a symbol of Gnosis. Gnosis is a word that means direct knowledge. It is not simply information, but a form of inner understanding that transforms the person who receives it. In ancient Gnostic traditions, knowledge of the divine structure of reality was believed to awaken the human spirit. And in that sense, the letter G becomes something very profound. It reminds the initiate that the divine order of the universe is not only something to observe in the stars or in sacred architecture. It is also something that must be discovered within oneself. In my opinion, this is where the symbol truly becomes powerful, because it stops being an abstract philosophical idea and starts becoming a guide for how to live. Within the Masonic tradition, the square represents moral integrity, which is the ability to act with honesty, fairness, and justice. The compasses represent spiritual awareness, the capacity to limit your impulses and live according to higher principles. And at the center of these tools sits the letter G, almost as if the symbol is suggesting that when moral discipline and spiritual awareness come into balance, something awakens in the center of human consciousness. Some initiates interpret that center as the place where the human being becomes aware of the greater order of the universe. I remember when I first began studying these symbols more deeply, one thought stayed with me for days. If the universe truly operates according to harmony and proportion, then perhaps the goal of spiritual traditions was never to escape the world, but to learn how to live in alignment with its hidden structure. And I am curious about something. When you look at this symbol, what do you think the letter G represents most strongly to you? God, geometry, or something deeper? I would really like to read your perspective in the comments, because different traditions often emphasize different aspects of this symbol. As Freemasonry spread across Europe and the Americas, the interpretation of the letter G continued to evolve. Esoteric philosophers, such as Manly P. Hall, suggested that the symbol represented humanity's search for universal truth. It was a reminder that wisdom could be found in the harmony of nature, in the structure of ancient temples, and in the moral development of the individual. Other traditions, connected to Rosicrucianism and Hermetic philosophy, began to see the symbol as representing the divine spark within the human being. This is the idea that the same intelligence that structured the cosmos is also present, in a smaller way, within human consciousness. This interpretation echoes a very ancient philosophical idea known as the Philosophia Perennis, or perennial philosophy. According to this view, many spiritual traditions across history have been pointing to the same essential truth, which is that the universe is ordered, meaningful, and intelligible, and that human beings have the capacity to awaken to that order. In that sense, the letter G becomes a reminder of responsibility. If the universe has structure, then our lives must also be built with structure. If creation follows harmony, then our actions should strive for harmony as well. And perhaps this is why the symbol has endured for so long, because even today, in an age dominated by technology and material explanations of reality, the letter G quietly asks a question that philosophers and mystics have asked for thousands of years. Is the universe simply random, or is it the expression of a deeper intelligence? Freemasonry never forces a single answer. Instead, it presents the symbol and invites the initiate to contemplate it throughout life. And in many ways, that might be the real secret hidden in the center of the square and compasses. The letter itself is simple, but the journey of understanding what it represents can last an entire lifetime. Before we finish, I would like to ask you something else. Do you think symbols like this still carry hidden wisdom that modern society has forgotten? Or are they simply historical curiosities from the past? Your thoughts might open perspectives that others reading the comments had never considered. Because sometimes, a single letter can become a doorway into some of the deepest questions humanity has ever asked.